Good morning, little sign. This morning I would like to speak to you from the scripture as recorded in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 17, verses 1 through 4. Beginning at verse 1, you'll find these words, "And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up to the high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And just for a few moments, little son, I would like to speak to you from the subject, it's good to be here. It's good to be here. Of all the great and marvelous works Jesus performed in his earthly ministry, none I've found is as compelling as what he does on the Mount of Olives. This episode in the ministry of Jesus is compelling because unlike the other marvelous works he performed, the transfiguration occurred absent the masses. It is in fact this stunning and awesome event occurred void of the witnesses of most of the apostolic company. As I examine in greater detail the events surrounding the transfiguration of Jesus, there are some truths which seem to jump from the experiences which can be applicable in our current circumstances. I notice for the transfiguration, Jesus chooses the Mount of Olives. In reviewing the location, there are certain things that I notice about the Mount of Olives that compels us to ponder various issues concerning this mountain. The first thing I noticed that the Mount of Olives is the location. The Mount of Olives is located in the Kidron Valley. The mountain is one of 3 mountain ranges which expands across the valley. At its peak, the Mount of Olives has an elevation of about 2,710 feet. So to reach the peak of the mountain during the time of the text would have been difficult. It would have been not have been an easy journey to navigate the summit. So the question is, why would Jesus choose to go to this mountain? The second thing I notice about the mountain is the history. When you look at the mountain, you notice that it has no historical value biblically. In fact, the mountain is best known for the fact that when David was fleeing from his son Absalom, David fled to the Mount of Olives as recorded in 2 Samuel, the 15th chapter, the 30th verse. It is there that the Bible records that David wept and was distressed at this mountain. So this place is a place of distress and weeping. And finally, the last thing I notice about the mountain is this is the place where Jesus practiced exclusion and inclusion. He practiced exclusion and inclusion because in this particular time, he only chose 3 of his apostles to go with him, and he left the other 9 behind. That means that 3 were included for the experience and 9 would have been excluded. When we consider the Mount of Olives, we realize that this is not a place that one would normally desire to go. I can imagine the confusion Peter, James, and John felt. Why would Jesus want to bring them to such a place? This is not a place of joy, but rather sorrow. It's not a place of victory, but rather travail. And Jesus brings him to this mountain. But after experiencing the transfiguration, Peter declares that it was good for us to be here. Today, as we continue to go navigate through the travail of this pandemic, we have continued to experience heartbreak, despair, and loss. But in light of this dark moment, I can hear the voice of the Apostle Peter echoing through the corridors of history, proclaiming, "It's good that we're here." So the question becomes, why is it good that we're here? Well, the first reason I believe it's good that we're here, it's good that we're here because being here validates the reality that exalted places in God can be found in the midst of what appears to be adverse circumstances. Notice again that this mountain was 2,710 feet in elevation, and it was a place of great sorrow and distress. But despite that, on this very mountain is the place where Jesus reveals a different aspect of his nature. It is important to understand that you cannot just trust your current circumstances and view them as simply being negative. But it is possible for you to be going through things that will make you cry, heartbroken, and be discouraged, and you're still in an exalted place. Not only that, it's good to be here because being here reveals God's plans and purposes for the exclusion of some and the inclusion of others. Again, it's important to understand that there were 12 apostles. And out of this 12, Jesus only chose 3 to go with him. That suggests to me that there are times where Jesus will select only a few to endure something, and the others will not be selected. And I've discovered that in our Christian walk, there are 2 things that we need to be aware of. It's not so important how you handle yourself when you're included. It's important how you handle yourself when you're excluded as well. I understand it's a good thing when you celebrate the fact that you're included in a blessing. But I want to know, how are you going to respond when your name isn't called? When it seems like you're on the outside, what is going to be your response then? And I'll stop by to tell you that this text, in going to this mountain, Jesus reveals to us that there will be a time when there will be some who are selected and some who are not. And what I find interesting is that Jesus does not give an explanation as to how he made the selection. He does not compel a gospel writer to give us a reason for it. We just know that 3 were chosen and 9 wasn't. And so then this mountain teaches us that there's a time of inclusion and exclusion. And finally, it's good to be here because being here allows us to see Jesus in a different way than we have before. And it validates the reality of Jesus' power and authority. It's on this mountain when he's transfigured that we're able to see Jesus in a different light. We see him now transformed by power. It's this moment that God validates and says he's the one that has all power and authority in his hand. Finally, as I go and conclude our discussion in the text, I would be remiss if I did not recognize the fact that there are some of us that started through this experience that is no longer with us. Some of us have been called home to be with God through this. But I believe today that if we had the opportunity to listen to their testimony, they would testify to some things for us. I believe that they would testify for us that according to um, the scripture, they will talk about the fact that Philippians declares, according to my earnest expectation and my hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether in it be by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. I believe someone would testify to the fact for us that 2 Timothy, the 4th chapter and the 6th through the 8th verses records, for I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I fought a good fight, I've finished my course, I've kept the faith. Henceforth there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all that also that love his appearance. And finally, I believe they would declare, as Job declared, oh, that my words were now written, oh, that they were printed in a book, that they were given with an iron pen and laid in a rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after the skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh I shall see God. Amen. God bless you, little sign, and we look forward to seeing you soon.